Good evening, everyone. It's nice for us to be together. I will, in just a second, I will start. But first of all, I'll ask um, if we can pray. All right. So let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we'd like to thank you so much for your grace and your love for us. And thank you for allowing us to learn something new tonight, something that we don't usually talk about in the church, but that is also needful and necessary for us. And we ask that you may accompany us so that we may understand your purpose for us while we are on this planet. And we pray and thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right, so why are we here in this world? Because, as Christians, we have a better world that is waiting for us, right? We know that the best investment in the world is investing in heaven because, over there, the streets are made out of gold and we will not have any problem, any issue anymore. And this is, as Christians, this is our basis. But also here on earth, we have a mission. We have a mission to teach people. We have a mission to let them know about the gospel. And we have a mission also to help people, those that are poor, those that are needy, those that are suffering, because of sickness or things like that. And so it is our mission to be able to help. Now, if we are poor, how much help can we give to someone else? Not much, right? If you're poor, actually, we ask for help from people. Right? Actually, you require help instead of offering help. So, sometimes I feel that the government is helping us or is helping people, poor people, because we don't do our job. We don't do our job very well. I think that God wants us to be givers. God is a giver. God is a God of love and he gives, and he wants us to be more generous than the government. If you see somebody, your neighbor needs help, you're going to give him help, right? If you can. Now, if you can't, unfortunately, you will send him to the government because the government can. So the government is smart enough to have, taxes, lots of taxes, so that they get the money and then they're able to give a little bit back to the people that need help. But I think we should be doing that thing. We should be helping people that are in need. Actually, in Jesus' times, people were the poor, the widows, the orphans. Who would take care of them? Not the government, not the king. It was everyone's responsibility to help the poor, the widow, and the orphans. And they had actually some money set aside for to help those people. So it is our duty to be helpful. And God has given us all the means, especially in North America. We have everything. We cannot complain, and we have all the opportunities and everything that is making us able to help others. So tonight, I want to start a plan where we can study a little bit and discuss on some topics on how to be able financially to stop the debt spiral, and to be able to get to a degree or a point where we don't need any help and where we can help others. Because ultimately, this is our goal, to be autonomous, self-sufficient, and able to give. There's only three things. There are only three things you can do with money: save, and you should do some of it; spend, and of course we all do; and give. And we should do a little bit of all three, right? And giving is where you find the most joy. You don't find a lot of joy in saving. I mean, if you're like me, I don't find a lot of joy in saving money. It's something I need to do, but it's not my pleasure. Spending can give you a little bit of joy, but it's very temporary. You can enjoy something that you bought, but it's very temporary. But giving is where you will find the most joy. And so that's why as Christian, giving is part of our lives. So tonight I'd like to talk about the first topic, which is budgeting and stopping the debt spiral, and basically how to get rid of debts and be at a point where you can start your journey. So up, right? Instead of going down, 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 down in debt, where you can start going up, up, up into being self-sufficient and able to be where you can help people. So why? Okay, so in order to, sometimes when you think about budget, budget is a very scary word. For many people, budget means restriction, means I can't do what I want, or budget is hard, it's complicated, but it's not. Budget is not complicated. A budget is just you telling your money where it needs to go. That's what it is. Okay. A budget is not after the facts. A budget is before it happens, you plan for it. So that's why I like to do a zero-based budget. So zero-based, why is it? Because it's a way of budgeting where you have all your income minus your expenses equals zero, right? So with a zero-based budget, you have to make sure that your expenses match your income during the months. That way, you're giving every dollar a job to do. You control your money. You are in control. So when you have a budget, you have all your income, you have all your expenses, and you tell your money where to go. So at the end of the month, you have zero and you're ready to start a new month fresh. Now, when you have zero, some of your expenses, of course, will go towards either paying your debt or saving once you're debt free. But the first step of a good financial journey, and everybody else will tell you that, is to have zero debt. So in order to have zero debt, you need to start, you need to stop borrowing more. It's a spiral. If you borrow and then you try to pay back. Some people have credit cards and they have like 10 credit cards and try to juggle between all of them, right? Having one and then paying one with the other one and then pay, and it's just moving your debt around. You're not actually getting rid of it. So our goal is to stop borrowing. And in order to start borrowing, you have to consider how your budget is and what you can improve in your budget so that you reach zero and not minus something, So all your incomes, you have to list all your incomes. If you have several jobs or if you have several sources of income, list them all, right? And then you list all your expenses, all your regular expenses, and that will, making a budget like this, it will take a little time at the beginning and maybe half an hour, maybe an hour, for the first time you do it. And you'll need to adjust it because you don't know what your months looks like. So you have to adjust it every month. Every month is different, but usually it will take about 2 to 3 months to have a budget that is pretty much balanced and pretty much reflects your life. So how do we do a budget? Well, first you write down your monthly income on a sheet of paper. Or if you're familiar with Excel, you can use an Excel spreadsheet and you enter your income, your expected income for the month. If you have several payments in a month, just do a monthly budget, right? So if you have several payments, just enter all your payments at the top of the page. Now, of course, some people have irregular incomes. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, or raise your hand if you have an irregular income. But those that have a monthly fixed income or pretty much fixed, just enter it at the top. Then you have to write down your monthly expenses. So things that can be expected that before the month begins, you have to fix an amount of money that you think it will cost you for the month. So things like rent, food, phone, everything you might want to buy, like furniture, like clothes. So, basically, or cars, gas, insurance, all of that. Now, sometimes your insurance or some payments like electricity bills or things like that, they are annualized, right? So they are different, or that you pay them every 2 months, or, so if you have a yearly bill that comes every year, once a year, you divide it by 12, and then you put 1/12 of that amount in that category, right? If you have a bill that you pay every 2 months, you divide it in 2. and then you put it in that category. So you try to roughly estimate how much you spend in real life in those categories. So food, utilities, shelter, which is your house payment or mortgage or rent, and transportation, right? Your means of transportation. So you list all your expenses like this. As many expenses as you remember, just list them all. And then at the end, you calculate how much you have in income minus expenses. And most of us you will be surprised how much money you're supposed to have left at the end of the month. You know, the first time I did my budget like this, usually I did the budget the other way around. Usually I did the budget at the end of the month just to make sure I had spent, you know, all my money. That's not the way. You need to do a budget at the beginning of every month. And so the first time I did it, I was surprised. I was like, but I still have $400 left every month after I spend everything else. Where are those $400 going every month? You know, $400 is a lot of money, right? Where is that money going every month? You know, and every month I would spend it and not knowing where it would go. And so when you do your money, your budget the first time, you'll feel like you have a raise. You feel, wow, I make so much money and I spend this much and I have this much left at the end of the month. Wow, I never expected that. You know, so for most of us, we have some kind of an idea in our heads, but it's not enough. It needs to be on paper. Once you start having a budget on paper, your budget becomes your plan. You know, so you decide what your budget looks like. You decide what your plan looks like. A budget is not constraining unless you decide to be constraining. So if you want to spend $10 a month for food, that's not advisable, right? It's not reasonable. But you basically decide what you want to spend for food. And so the first months, let's say, you know, your family of four, 2 adults, 2 kids, maybe you put, you know, $400-500 a month. You guess roughly, and then you see as the months, you know, develops, you see how much you actually spend. You keep track of your expenses. And for the first months, keep track of your expenses and see how much you actually spent in food. And then you adjust it. At the end of the month, you say, well, actually, I spent 600 and not 400. You know, I thought I would spend 400 and I spent 600. Okay, so you adjust it. Next month, you keep track of all your expenses in food, in the food budget, and you do the same thing. Well, actually, it was not 600, it was, you know, 550 average between those 2 months. So you go like this, right? And after 3 months of working your budget, then you realize how much you actually spend in every category. And you have a pretty reliable picture of your household expense. Now, I would strongly advise that if you're married, you work with your husband or wife on that budget. I don't recommend having separate budgets in a household. If you live together, if you're married, that means that you have a plan together, right? To live together. So you share things in life. You share plans for the future. You share your expenses. So you should also share your plans and your goals, right? It's very hard if you're two and you don't share your life, your financial life. It will cause a wedge being built between the two of you. So it's very important to work with your partner, your life partner, your married partner. And I wanted to explain a little bit what's the difference between life partners and married partners. As you know, legally, when you're married, you share the weight of the expenses. So you're both responsible for all the expenses. When you're not married, you have a roommate, basically. Legally, you cannot do things together. And you should not do things together. Like, for example, buying a house. You should never buy a house when you're not married, because then you create a business relationship in a partnership instead of a married relationship. And you know, when you're married, you are together, and there's a thing that's called divorce, which agree with, but that happens, right? But there's a process. In a divorce, the judge will separate all the assets. Now, if you have a business partner and you're living together, it's very, very complicated to separate two things. And so it's much harder and also there's a tax implication also that is very complicated, and you don't want to go into those things. So that's why it's recommended to be married when you live together, so that everything is much simpler. So you put all your income together, you put all your expenses together as a household, and you talk about everything. And then you talk about your goals. Talk about your goals in life. What do you want to do this month? What do you want to do in 6 months? What do you want to do in 10 years, right? For example, if you need a car, for example, well, you have in your budget, you put a line for buying a car. And you decide to, save $50 a month or $100 a month or $200 a month. And you decide, I'll put that money towards buying a car. And so you can put in the separate savings accounts at your bank. It's usually free to have a savings, to open a savings account at the bank. And you just put $200 every month towards this account. And after 10 months, well, guess what? You have $2,000. $2,000 is enough to buy a car. Not brand new, but it's enough to buy a car that's reliable enough to drive you from work to home, right? And that's what you need, especially when you're starting as a starter, a beginner, especially if you have debts. I don't recommend buying a new car. Because guess what? Buying a new car means getting more debts, right? And you don't want to have debts, more debts. Debts is a spiral, and it's the enemy. Debts is what makes the banks rich and makes you poor. Look at your house or your apartment. Look at the size of your house and your apartment, and now look at the bank and their headquarters. How big is their headquarters or their banks? They're huge. They have the highest, buildings in town. Those are banks. They have the highest buildings. And why? Because they make money from us. So if we have debts, we pay the bank. We give money to the bank every month. Now, what I will teach you in the future classes is how to do the opposite, where the banks will start paying you interest, and not just 1% on your accounts, but several percents, where you actually will have a savings and increased money. That's the goal. So you have to stop all borrowing. That's the first rule. When you look at your income and your expenses, it has to be either zero or above zero. You should still have some money left at the end of the month. If you don't, then you have a different problem. You don't have a money problem. You don't have a spending problem. You have an income problem, right? So if you have an income problem, then that's different. You need to find a different job. You need to do work from home, maybe, especially in COVID now. We can do a lot of work from home. You can give classes, you can give lessons, you can have a second job, a third job. You can deliver pizza at nights. You can do a lot of things, and that's different points. But there are many, many ways to have a better income. And sometimes it can be temporary. You don't want to have 3 jobs forever, but you have to look for better careers. So if you have any questions about career and how to have a better paying job, that would be maybe a different. I don't think we'll talk about this in those classes, but if you need counsels on how to find your career, how to find your goal in life, sometimes people don't know that until they are 50. They don't know what they want to do in life. They've hopped from job to job, and they don't really know their talent or their goal or their passion. But it is possible to find a good paying job that will support you and your family. Or if you don't find one, create your own job. It is very easy nowadays to have your own job. If you can do some knitting, you can do some sewing, if you have those talents, you can do some art things. You can do some classes, like for example, you speak English, right? So you could give English classes to people that don't speak English. My wife has started a business where she teaches English to Chinese kids online. So you have to wake up at 4 in the morning because it's their time, right? But you can give those classes. And so there are many, many ways to be able to raise some additional funds. And it means that you will work more, but working has never killed anybody. You know, people have never died because they overwork. Before you die, you pass out, right? If you work, 80, 90 hours a week, 100 hours a week, you will not die, you'll pass out first. So working a lot is never a problem. Unless it's a very long time, and you do that all your life, and then it could be damaging your health. But it's very important. Like when I first started this program that I'm teaching you now, about 4 years ago, we were in debt. We were $35,000 in debt, student loans from my wife. And we had no hope of paying it back. We didn't know how to pay it back because every month we'd spend everything we had earned. And there was no hope for me to get a raise. And as a pastor, we're not paid a lot at all. And so, we didn't know what to do. And we're pretty stuck. And so if you feel stuck, that's the right time to start something different. So writing down your budget is the first step to get rid of debts. First is assess your current situation. Now, once you know your current situation, now you have to attack your debts. So if you have any money left over at the end of the month, after all your expenses, which you should when you do your budget, then it's time to pay off your debts. Now, what is the first thing you do if you want to get ahead of the game? First thing you do is don't make new debts. And you know what is the best way not to make any more debts? The best way is to cut off your credit card. What? Yes, that's the best way. Cutting off your credit card. You know what your credit card is? Your credit card is debt in your wallet. It's not money. You don't have money on your credit card. What do you have? How much do you have on your credit card? You have zero. And then every time you use it, you borrow a little bit more and a little bit more, and you borrow more and you borrow more, and you hope to be able to pay it all in full before the end of the month, right? But that's a hope. That's a hope that everything goes well. That's a hope that you keep your job. That's a hope that nothing happens during the months. That's a hope for many things. And it's like a danger, a constant danger. It's like a sword that you have above your head and it's ready to chop your head off if anything happens in life and you're not able to pay it back. So most people play with it. Most people say, well, I pay it in full every month. And so they think it's okay to have debts. Well, is it okay to borrow and then pay back? Well, what does the Bible say about borrowing? I would like you to turn with me and let me just open my King James Bible, and I'll allow you to go to Malachi. Actually, sorry, it's not Malachi. It's just a second. Just a second. I thought I had this planned out. I just lost it here. Okay, this is in Proverbs 22, verse 6. Okay, so you know this verse pretty well. Proverbs 22, verse 6. Proverbs 22, verse 6, where it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. Right? Most of us know this verse very well. We train up our children in the way they should go because we have a hope that when they grow older, they'll do the things we told them, right? That's education. Now, what's very interesting, and to me it's extremely interesting, that the very next verse talks about how we should educate our children as well. The very next verse, verse 7 says, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Or in some versions, it says slave. The borrower is slave to the lender. Now, fortunately, I grew up in France, and in France, we don't have a history of slavery so much. But, in North America, when you talk about slavery, people are offended because there's a history, a very strong history here of slavery. Nobody wants to be called a slave. Nobody wants to be a slave. What does the verse say? The borrower is slave to the lender. So if you open your wallet and you have a MasterCard, who is your master? Right? MasterCard. That's your master and you're the slave. If you have a Visa, you're a slave to Visa. Right? If you have any credit cards from any stores, you are slave of that store. And you know what? They know it very well. They know very well that you're a slave. That's why they push those cards on you. Credit cards is the most is the product in the world that is the most advertised for. In the whole world, there has never been anything that is sold with more energy than credit cards. If you go to any store, they ask you, do you want to apply for a card? Why did they ask you? Why do you think they ask you? They market this so well that people fall for it. You know that most of the people in North America have credit cards in their wallet? This is the thing they will all buy. Like all of them have credit cards. They might not have a Bible. They might not have, other things in their homes, but they all have a credit card. Why do you think? Because stores push it on us. And they try to attract young kids, teenagers, people in school, because they know that teenagers, for example, or young adults in university, once they get a card, they feel privileged. Oh, I have a card. I have a credit card now. I'm a grown up. I can spend as I want. And there have been some studies that show that the first credit card you have when you're a kid, you are usually extremely loyal to that brand until the rest of your life. So most likely, those of you that got a credit card when you were young, your first bank, basically, you still have an account there. Am I wrong? I think that's pretty much the case for many of us. The first bank you have, usually you're very loyal to it, unless something happens with that bank. But usually so they try to market that, and many stores also do that. They try to market those products on you because they know that even if you plan to pay it off every month in full, there will be a point. There will be times where you have issues and troubles. And there will be times where you'll not be able to pay it. And they count on that. They're smart. Some other people say, well, I have a credit card, but it's fine because I get points or cash back, right? So yeah, I get cash back, right? $20 back every month or $30 back. And I've spent everything, I put everything on the credit card. And at the end of the month, I got $20 back. Yay! Do you know any rich person that got rich because of credit cards points? Nobody. You don't get rich because of that. Do you know why would they give you money back? Why in the world would they generously, out of their good hearts, as a company, decide to give you back some money? Well, because they got it in the first place. And they got it from where? They got it from you. That's right. They got it from all of us that are spending money. Every time you spend money with your credit card, you have an extra charge that is charged from the store, and the store has to adjust their prices up so that they can cover this charge. And so there is a percentage of every buy or every sale the store makes, that goes to MasterCard or Visa. And then in turn, they can give you a little bit back, the crumbs. They give you a few dollars back, so just to make you happy, so that as a slave, that you don't feel so much that slavery. But this is a slavery relationship. And the Bible is very clear. When you borrow money, we are slaves. So that's the very first step. Very first step is look at your credit card tonight and think about how useful it has been. Has it brought happiness in your life or more trouble? And yes, sometimes we feel that we can spend and we don't plan. So we just spend and we'll fix it at the end of the month. We'll fix it later. And then the end of the month comes and we're like, oh, how am I going to pay my credit card now? I have to take from here, or I have to borrow my line of credit to pay my credit card. But guess what? When you borrow on your line of credits, you're not paying off your credit card. You're just moving your debt around. You're not actually paying it off. And then it accumulates and accumulates and accumulates. And that's a problem. So the first step in finding freedom is to remove that piece of, that attaches us to as a slave to our master. So now the second thing also is when you have debts, there's a method to pay them. And there are actually two methods to pay them, but one is very efficient and the other one not so much. The best method to pay off all your debts is to list your debts smallest to largest, regardless of interest rates. List all your debts, and this is maybe a task for you tonight as you listen to that and before next week. Make a list of all your debts, smallest first to largest. Besides your mortgage, if you have a mortgage, don't consider your mortgage. That's a very different type of debt. But list your debts smallest to largest. Make a list and you start paying off. You start paying the minimum on all of them. And you attack your first one with a vengeance. So maybe it's a credit card. Usually it's a credit card or a phone bill or any bill you have. And you attack the first one, the small one, maybe a $50 one, maybe $200, and you attack it with all you've got. So because you pay the minimum on all of them, instead of trying to pay everything at once, pay the minimum on all of them and put the maximum you can on the first one and get rid of it. Once the first one you get rid of it, then you put the money that you used for that first one, you put it on the second one. And then you pay the maximum there every month until you get rid of it. And then you put all the money now that you have available, you have a little bit more available now. So then you put it on the third one and so on and so on. And so as you go, it's called the snowball method, because as you go, you have more and more money left to pay the bigger and bigger amounts. And so the balls start rolling and you pay more and more and more every month towards your debts until you get rid of all of them. And of course, the last one might be the longest one. It might take a few months, but you'll get rid of it if you do that method. So don't try to pay everything all together every month, because you won't. You're not able to many times. Try to pay the minimum on all of them and attack the first one, the smallest one. Now, people say, well, maybe you should put them in different order. Maybe you should put them the highest interest first. Not really, actually. Because you're supposed to do that step very, very, very quickly. You're supposed to pay off your debts in less than 2 years. If you're not able to pay your debts in less than 2 years, that means that you have an issue, a different issue. Either you have too much spending, you spend too much, or you don't earn enough. And that's a different problem. But most of us are able to pay all our debts, including student loans, in under 2 years. And then interests for 2 years, and actually it's not the full 2 years because you have paid half during that time, right, in a year. So the interest that you accumulate in 2 years is not very high. But the benefit of paying the smaller debt first is very, very big. When you pay your smaller debt first, you have a sense of traction. And having or paying off debts is not a mathematical formula. Because if it was, nobody would have debts, because debts cost you money, right? So it's a very emotional relationship that we have with debts. Once you pay off a debt, you have more energy and you're encouraged to pay off the second one and the third one and the fourth until you get rid of all of them, right? So it's very emotional relationship. Now, so this is very first step. First step is having your budget. Second step is doing the debt snowball and paying off your debts smallest to largest using the debt snowball method. Now, some people are afraid, oh, we don't have credit cards now. How are we going to do if there's an emergency? How do I do? I have my credit card. I put everything in my credit card. If I have an emergency, I need my credit card. Well, guess what? A debit card does exactly the same thing if you have money, right? So once you get rid of all your debts, guess what? What do you have now? Now you have money. And money is able to help you in case of emergency. So what I counsel people to do once they start doing the debt snowball is before paying off your debts, if you have any, before paying off your debts, save $1,000 as an emergency fund. $1,000, you can save it really, really quickly if you have, if you're excited, if you have the desire, if you're, many of you might have already an emergency fund of higher than $1,000. If you have debts and you have an emergency fund that's, for example, $10,000 and you have debts, this is stupid. I'm sorry, I don't call you stupid, but it's stupid to have money in the bank accounts and have debts that cost you, 3%, 5%, 20%, and have an emergency fund. So if you have an emergency fund, get rid of all of it except $1,000 that you leave there. Get all of it and put it towards your loan and your debts, smallest to largest. If you don't have $1,000, you need to be able to find ways to get it. So you can do everything you can. So you can get a second job, a third job. You can do side gigs for friends and family. You can do a yard sale, sell everything you have. Well, not everything, but things that are not so useful. Try to find ways to have $1,000. If you also contribute to retirement plans, like investment plans, and we'll talk about investment later, but this is also not a good idea when you have debts. If you have debts, you should not invest towards retirement. Instead, you should pay off your debt so that later you have more money to invest for retirement. And we'll show you about how to invest for retirement. But it's very important to start with zero. When you have debts, you're under zero, right? You're in a negative. What I want you to realize is that I want you to be back on zero, and then from there start growing up and up and up, right? So before you start investing, before you think about retirement, stop every retirement plans you have, stop every contribution you have. Don't cash it out though, don't cash it out, but stop any more investing for retirement and take all the money you've got, all the money you have everywhere else that is not retirement, and put it towards your loan. Once all your loan are paid off, that will be the lesson for next time. Lesson for next time will be called actually insurances and being a smart buyer, college payment and car buying. So that's when you have already no more debts. Now, I want to give you a glimpse of how people don't realize how much it's important to get ahead in life. Many times we have our routine, and we don't think about how to get along. We just live, and we don't think about getting ahead of the crowd. Already, if you have zero debts, you're ahead of 95% of the people. 95% of the people in Canada. So zero debts, you're already ahead of 95% of the people. And consciously taking that decided action is hard. I agree that it's hard. Sometimes you don't know how to do. And so if you have further questions after the end of this class, some of them we can answer in a few minutes. But if you have further questions, just feel free to contact me on a one-on-one, and then I'll try to help you. But the point is, you need to first stop borrowing. Don't borrow on a car. Don't borrow, on the credit card. Don't do line of credits. Don't go to the stores, and if they offer you 10 payments, don't accept that. If you're not able to pay it cash, that means you're not supposed to buy it. wait, you know, and then buy it later on. You know, in our society, we live in a cashless society, and we live in a time where you see something, you want it right now. And that's a problem. We need patience. This plan is a plan for your whole life. You want to be rich at, you know, during all those years until you reach, you know, your old ages and old years, and you want to be rich then. But it takes a long time. Now, if you don't plan it from now on, you'll see yourself, you know, at 60, 70, 80, and you'll have zero on your bank account. And it's a very bad place to be. So I have relatives that are in that situation, and it's really hard because then they're expecting us to help them, and it's really hard for us, you know? So you don't want to be like that. Now, what if instead you're young and you hear about this plan and you want to invest? Once you have you got rid of all your debts, and now you're ready to invest. I just want to share with you a graph. And I'll show you that in a second. It's a graph about Jake and Blake. All right, let me just show you that. I'll share my screen. And we'll compare. All right, can you see my screen? All right, so we're just going to compare a little bit Jake and Blake. So Jack and Blake. Jack started to invest at the age of 21. He invested just $200 every month. You know, he worked a little bit, side jobs, and he put $200 in investments every month, which is $2,400 every year, for 9 years until he reached the age of 30. And then he stopped. $200 a month from age 21 to age 30, right? So the total invested over 9 years is $21,600, correct? Okay. Now, later on, so he doesn't add a cent. He has invested for 9 years only, $200 a month, and then he does not invest a cent. And with the program I'll show you, which is very legit. I mean, 4 million people have actually taken it in the US. You know, it's not a scam or anything like that, right? It's a very reasonable way to do things. And I've experienced this for the past 4 years. So now, at the end of his life, when he's ready to retire, you know, at 67, he's retiring, he has 2.5 million in the bank, right? That's the power of compound interest. So compound interest is when you have $100, next year, if you have, let's say for round numbers, you know, you have 10% interest, let's say for round numbers. So first year you have $100, next year you have 110. The following year, you don't have 120 anymore. You have 121 because it's 10% of 110, and so on and so on. So the interest gets accumulated and gives you interest too. So every year you have interest over interest over interest over interest, and the return is exponential, right? So if he has put $200 since he was 21 until for 9 years until he's 30, and then he stops investing, he will have 2.5 million. Now his brother Blake was a little late in the game. So he didn't start investing so much. And at age 30, he looks at Jack and he's like, well, my brother's doing really well. You know, he has $21,000 in the bank. He's doing really well. So he decides to invest the same amount, $200 a month. So in order to reach this, the amount of his brother, he does not stop. He invests $200 every month from age 30 to age 67. So he has invested in total of 38 years. He has invested 91,200. So a lot more than his brother, correct? But he never caught up. He has retirement now. He's 67 and he has $1.4 million. So it's not bad. It's $1.4 million, you know, there would be good things that you can do with $1,400,000, but he never caught up. So for those of you that are in your 20s or early 30s, I highly recommend you to follow this plan. If you have children that are this age, I highly recommend you to show them this plan. And we'll talk about how to invest also in one of those classes. But it's very important to get rid of your debts and stop being normal. Everybody, the way everybody lives is not good. You want to be better than the average. You want to be better than what everybody does. And so you need to invest early, and then that's it, and then let the compound interest work for you. So this was just a small glimpse of what could happen if we invest regularly. Now, I'll open now the floor for some questions. If you have any questions about budgeting and also about how to get rid of debts. So in just a second, I'll open the floor. And anyone who wants to say something, please feel free to ask your questions. Anyone?
Yeah. So like you would advise the younger generation to not get credit cards, basically.
Yes.
But like everything, if you want to buy online, you have to have a MasterCard or like a credit card.
Visa. You need to have you can have a Visa debit card. And all debit cards
Visa debit cards.
Yeah, Visa debit cards give you the ability to buy online, and there's no problem. You can also purchase a lot of things with PayPal. PayPal is linked directly to your bank accounts. So if you have the option to pay with PayPal, you can do that. You can purchase some prepaid debit cards where you can, put money on the card first before you spend it, and then spend it. You can recharge the card, or you can just ask your bank to give you a Visa debit card. That's the best way to do it, because you know that you have the money on your account. You know you will not overspend, right? Claudette, I saw you had your hand raised. I don't hear you though. You're unmuted, but I don't hear your microphone. I'm not sure what's happening. I don't hear you at all. It's a problem probably with your microphone. I don't know.
Okay, Etienne.
Yeah, so, sure, Roberto. While we're doing with maybe Claudette, you can see what's going on.
Yeah, one question for you.
Yes, Roberto.
I understand this thing of no credit cards. I really don't. I don't have any, but I think I learned this lesson from before, getting myself into debt. And yeah, there is a time that I couldn't get out of it anymore, and it was better to actually break them all and forget about them. So I did. And I'm still paying for some of those debts, but I have been being able to manage, because I entered in some kind of a program that it was dictated to actually pay a certain amount monthly, and I did. There was one thing, one company which I couldn't, at the moment that I did this, I couldn't actually get them, and it was TELUS. Mm-hmm. So I got a debt with them, and then that they have actually tried to look for me and ask me and tell me, no, you're gonna pay me this. Well, I only could say something. Listen, man, I don't have money. I'm on disability. I don't really make much, and I don't have the amount of money that I owe you. I know we can work something. I will pay you, but right now I don't have it. So that's the debt that I have that is coming up to here. But that is actually for the time being. So what should I actually attack that completely to erase it from my existence?
Well, that's the thing. When you have debts, those debt collectors, they're expert in calling you and harassing you for you to pay, right? So yes. So I would recommend two things. First of all, if you have to deal with debt collectors, have a plan. Don't let them manipulate you and push you around because they want their money. They'll do everything they can, right? So don't let them control you. You have to make your plan. You have to make your budget and list your debts smallest to largest. So if you just have one debt, that's fine. If you have several debts, list them smallest to largest. And you tell them, if somebody down the list calls you, you say, well, I'll come to you, but first I'll pay someone else first. And don't let them, push you around. And and they can threaten you. They can, threaten you to go to court and something, but as long as you're not bankrupt and as long as you're paying your minimum payments, you should not have any problem with debt collectors. So if you have a plan for, except if you have debts to the federal government, that would be different. If you have any debts,
I don't owe anything to federal government.
Very different.
This is just a thing with this Telos company.
Yes. So
that is it.
So if you have a debt with the federal government, that's emergency. You need to pay them right away because they have unlimited powers. They can take
I understand. So, that I understand, but it's not my case.
So if you have a debt with somebody that is down the list, it's not your priority. It's not your top of your snowball. It's not as small as debt. Then let them marinate. Tell them to hold off, and every time they call you, you say, "I'll repeat you the same thing. I'll pay you when you come, in that list. And when I come to you, then I'll pay you." Right? So follow your plan. Pay the smallest debts first until you come to the largest debts, and then eventually you will pay them off. Now, I hope you will never have a bankruptcy. Most people that think they're bankrupt are actually not bankrupt. They think they're bankrupt because they don't see the solution to paying up their debts. So many people that feel they're bankrupt should really do their budgets, and I can talk with them and then help them. But many times it's an income problem. Many times it's a spending problem, and very seldom they are actually bankrupt.
Okay.
Is there any other question?
Yes, I wanted you to explain more about, or maybe you could just text me about it. Compound interest.
Yes. I'll talk about this. If you look at the flyer, I'll talk about it when point number 4. So in 3 weeks, basically, how to invest successfully, retirement and other investments. So you should never, again, I repeat, you should never invest a cent if you still have debts, right? So don't invest if you have debts. This is not smart. You first need to build, it's like if you build a house, you first start by the ground level, right? The foundations. So build your foundations, be debt-free. Once you're debt-free, then you can start building the rest of the house. You don't build the roof first, because the roof is the nicest part, but you don't build it first, So, so if you want to be solid, because if you have investments and debts, one time what can happen is that people are bankrupt, or they have so much debt that they take from their retirement investment to pay off their debts, and then they find themselves at retirement with nothing. And I've seen that. And also retirement investments, when you take money out of your investments, many times it's taxable. So when you take money out of your investment, you're taxable at your tax rate, which is around 30%, plus a penalty because you took it out before you retired. So 30%, you pay 30% of your money because you took it out from your retirement, from your investment, plus a penalty. It's like borrowing money at 30% interest to pay off your credit card at 20% interest, right? So it's not smart. You should always pay off your debts first and then build from there. So if you're coming to the class in the following weeks, you'll hear about how to invest and how to really be successful. So I hope that helps. And to be honest with you, having $1 million in North America now is not a lot. It's okay, but it's not a lot. And you may need to have a little bit more. So buying a house in Toronto area, for example, is about $1 million. In Vancouver, you don't get any house for $1 million. You need at least $2 million to have a decent house. So, you know, and who knows how much a house will cost when we need to retire. So it's important to plan well your life. If you're closer to the end of your life, you have to work it faster, to work the plan faster, and you can make more sacrifices. Many times, if you're close to retirement, you don't have children anymore to take care of, so you can actually invest heavily and try to catch back, but the time, you know, try to catch up the time. But many times, it's better to start when you're young. So I wish I had heard about that plan when I was 20. I heard about it when I was 31. So it's still not too late, but for those that are in their 20s, I highly recommend you. If you hear that in your 20s and you follow that plan, you'll be a multimillionaire before 50. And that's a promise if you follow that plan. It's not a joke, but you have to be serious about it. All right. Remember that that guy that we talked to about Jack, $200. He only invested 9 years, $200 a month. $200 a month is possible for most of us, right? And he invested for 9 years and he stopped, and he got 2.5 million at retirement. So it's not impossible at all. It only takes a little bit of discipline and so on. So I hope that by next class you're able to write down a beginning of a budget. We're November 3rd, so it's the beginning of the month. List already the expenses that you've had from the beginning of this month. You only have a few expenses that have started. And list all your income and your expenses and try to work your budget. And if you're not sure, you can send me a copy of your budgets, and it will be confidential. Don't worry. But I can help you, you know, with planning and so on. Also, another task is if you have any debts, list your debts smallest to largest. Again, no mortgage. The mortgage is a very different debt, and we'll talk about that later. But all your consumer debts, credit cards, line of credit, a car loan, even if you leased a car, for example, a car lease is a debt, right? You lease a car, it's a debt. You don't own the car, so it's a debt. So list all your debts. All right. Any other questions? I've worked with my budgets every month since 4 years now. And what I did is that I'm a techie person, so I like technology. So I have an Excel spreadsheet on my phone, and it's synchronized with my wife's phone. So every time we spend something, we can put it in the budget, right? So we have a planned budget, let's say $600 for food a month, and then every time we spend something, we add the expense. At the grocery store, when we walk out, we just, you know, enter an expense. And then if we get closer to $600, then it becomes it becomes orange and then red, so that we don't spend more than $600 a month. That's our goal. That's our mission. And we'll not spend a cent more. And if we don't have money to, you know, at the end of the month, like the 20th, and we have spent $600, we'll not buy anything. And we'll make sure we don't do that. So that's why your budget tells you how to spend your money. You control your budget, and your budget helps you control your money. So don't plan a budget and then spend as you want, right? Make your budget and then follow it.
All right. Me, I'm gonna leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We're going
Bye,
to
everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Bye, John.
Bye.
Yeah, bye, Chance. And I think we're going to close as well, unless anyone else has a question. Don't hesitate to contact me during the week, and I hope it is profitable for you. This is a first step, and I hope you enjoy it. It will take time talking with your partner and listing, you know, your income and your expenses and your debts, but I'm sure it will be profitable for you.
So one question, when is the next class?
Yes, so the next class will be actually next Monday. From now on, it will be on Monday. I'm not able to be present on Tuesdays anymore. So next class will be on Monday 9 at 7 p.m.
I will send you a reminder to all of you, so don't worry about it.
Next Monday.
Yes.
Well, I won't be able to be there because at 7 p.m. on Monday, I have a yoga class, which is important for my mobility and all. Believe me, for my MMS, it's important. And it's Monday.
So Roberto, the classes will be recorded. I'll give the link to George, and he'll be able to give you the links. For you.
Sounds great.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Cesar Claudette, your sound is working now, I think. You had a...
Now, for me, my concern is mostly about the part where you go to buy the house you want and how to go about. This is me, it's like the second part. You know what I mean, Etienne?
Yes.
It's this part that I'm at now. This part, how to go about doing this part, not to go with the banks, go with the mortgage broker that is trying to help you, not the other way, with the bank who's trying to take advantage of you. This is where I want to learn this part.
That's right. So that will be the class number 3 about house buying, how to apply for a mortgage, and the dangers to avoid in buying a house. And so that will be next class number 3. Class number 2, next one will be about insurances and how to buy items that are expensive like cars and things like that. It will be also very interesting, and I hope we'll be able to answer some questions. But class number 3 will answer your question, Claudette.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So God bless. I wish you a good night of rest, and talk with your partner about your budget, and try to sell them the idea of a budget. Many times we've not worked with a budget in our lives, and it's important to be consistent. All right.
Thank you so much, Brother Etienne. Thank you. Really appreciate your effort.
Take care. No problem.
Bye, guys.
So see you next Monday at 7 p.m.
Thank you.